it is quite, intimidating handling big bundles of money. But after a while, it just becomes, they're just bits of paper. They're bits of paper that have numbers on. So I think travel will be the last place where you will see cash disappear. So it will last for the longest. The reason being that a couple of things. There's some human behavioural side, but there's also some ecosystem stuff. And I'm a big believer that, having lots of money doesn't necessarily buy you happiness or pleasure. But having no money can definitely be a cause of upset and a bad time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Boardroom Uncovered, powered by City AM. My name's John Robinson, City AM's UK editor, and my guest today is the CEO of Travelex, Richard Wazacz. The CEO has led the world's biggest foreign exchange company since 2022, off the back of a series of body blows that brought the business to its knees. Now under new ownership, Travelex is battling the slow decline in physical cash and also tapping into the continued post-pandemic rise in tourism. Can Travelex continue its remarkable turnaround and pivot to more digital products to head off competition from the likes of Revolut and Wise? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Well, Richard, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered today. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Obviously, the CEO of a truly global business with customers right around the world, operations right around the world as well. But in the UK, I believe you have a secret vault. So first question, where is the vault and what's the passcode, please?
So you can quite understand, I have to be a little bit coy on this. So our vault it's in England.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, we narrowed it down,
in the
that's
UK,
fine.
It's in England. And I don't know what the PIN or the codes are. So the security that we subject everyone to is as much for me as it is for everyone else. So if I don't turn up with my passport or my ID, even though I think most of the colleagues know who I am, they won't let me in. So the security is pretty top notch.
Yeah, I bet it is. It must have to be renewed all the time, and not just digitally but physically as well. It must be quite an operation in and of itself.
Absolutely, and it's probably important to put there are lots of secure locations in the UK supporting many companies and other industries, both our competitors, but also any business that has high valuable items or controlled substances, pharmaceuticals, will operate similar, vault facilities. And there are standards that we adhere to that are recognised internationally as being, top notch. Yeah. And the insurers acknowledge are good enough. And then, we, like everyone else, just make sure that we maintain those standards.
What I'm imagining is that you finally get through all of the layers of security and there's piles of gold coins and there's a diving board. And that you go to the end of the diving board, Scrooge McDuck style, and you dive in.
It's not as glamorous as that. There are pallets of bundles of cash. And I think one of the things that a lot of people find that when they work for Travelex, and it's the same for our colleagues in stores. I was visiting a store this morning, and one of the colleagues was saying his first few weeks, it is quite, intimidating handling big bundles of money. But after a while, it just becomes, they're just bits of paper. They're bits of paper that have numbers on. And fundamentally, at Travelex, we're retailers. Yeah, we are there to support customers' needs. And it just happens that our SKUs are denominations of banknotes. Other people's SKUs are mobile phones or groceries or tinned goods. Ours are just different denominations and different currencies. And each one is a different SKU. And our job is to make sure that we fulfill the orders with the right SKUs. And you become very much unemotional about it. It's not your money. You're providing a service to your customers with the company's money.
Travelex really is everywhere. You're a mainstay at international airports across the globe, but also in places that people might not necessarily realise. You're obviously doing the exchange at Tesco and Asda across the UK, but that's branded as a supermarket.
Yeah.
So people might come across Travelex and not realise until they see the receipts handed to them. It really is everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the business has been around it was set up in 1976. It started as a store in central London, and over time has grown. And, our core business is helping customers with their international travel money. And we're very comfortable that some of those customers are directly ours, but some of them are the customers of our partners. And fundamentally, we're focusing on solving one particular problem. It's that when people come to us, they have a need, they are going abroad. And a lot of our customers are the kind of people that don't travel very frequently. Or when they travel, they're traveling to a location they've never been to before. They're nervous, they need support. And we're almost providing a service of advice about travel money, and then we fulfill the requirement as well by giving them either the cash or the travel money card that they need to sort the solution. But very much focusing on helping anybody who has that problem. And partners such as Tesco, Sainsbury's, they are Asda, they have a lot of customers and they're trying to provide a full range of services. So we step in and help them with that particular need.
Obviously, you said the company dates back to the mid-70s. Still around today all across the world, but it has been quite the 5 years or so for the company. 2019, they had the cyber attack, they had the accounting scandal, then the pandemic, and then administration 2020, obviously all before you joined. But it's a hell of a 5 years to have gone through.
It has. And, hats off, and I say this, the colleagues that have stayed with the company through that time really care about the brand and the business and what we do for our customers. It's a business that's gone through a lot. And I think the fact that Travelex has come back since the pandemic so strongly and in such a great place is a real testament to the strength of the brand and, the reputation of the business as being there to help customers with their travel money. What you just described could have killed a lot of brands. And the Travelex brand has survived and come back. So it's faced tailwinds, and headwinds. Tailwinds have pushed it along, but headwinds have pushed it back. But overall, the business has kept going. So yes, absolutely. And I think it's important to sort of point out the things that happened to Travelex were things that happened that weren't affecting our core business. There were things that never took away from the fact that we were there looking after customers. The cyber attack, the accounting scandal, which was, unfortunate, a period of ownership of the company, which happened. But now, since the pandemic has finished and the company's come back, all of that is in the past. And the business now is on a strong footing and is growing. And we're in a stronger, fitter, and probably leaner place than we've ever been before.
Leaner because of the operations have slimmed down or because of the headcount?
So leaner in the sense that we utilise our resources more efficiently. And I'll give some examples of that. So absolutely, during the pandemic, nobody was travelling. My predecessor had to absolutely make some really tough decisions. We had to let a lot of people go. A lot of those people have come back since the pandemic and we've welcomed them back, but a lot of people haven't. When the business was coming out of administration, clearly we had to be very careful about how we performed financially, and we had to be very careful how we spent money and how where we put costs. So we've built the business back up much more efficiently. So the number of colleagues we have in the business has grown, and we're back to similar levels to pre-pandemic. We've got a slightly smaller geographic footprint, so we have less colleagues in comparison to pre-pandemic, but we still have about 4,000, 5,000 colleagues around the world. But in terms of the efficiency at which we work, for instance, our stock, our inventory is cash. And since the pandemic, we have managed to operate the business using much less inventory, much less stock. We turn it over faster. We're much more efficient in how we use our money and our resources in the business. And that's a testament to the team coming back from the pandemic and being more efficient in how they work.
So would you say that Travelex is in a position where it's had a complete turnaround after what's happened over the last 5 years, or you say there's still some way to go to get back to maybe where it was 2018, 2017 sort of time?
The turnaround is complete, and I think the recovery is now complete. We're now into a phase of focusing on new growth. There are a couple of markets that we're not in anymore. We're not in the USA. We're not in France, for instance. But we're now looking at going into new markets in Asia and the Middle East. We are growing our distribution network and working with more partners. So the business is very much in a growth mode now. Our recovery is concluded. We're now focusing on growth.
It's interesting that you're no longer in the US and France. France, obviously, having just hosted the Olympics, the US hosting the next Olympics. Why those two countries and not? There'll be loads of people traveling to those countries.
No. I think these were when the business went into administration. the administrators and the management at the time had to look at where did it make sense to keep deploying capital and keep focusing on running the business. And it was deemed that France and the USA were businesses that were hard to operate under those circumstances. Would we ever want to go back into those countries? Absolutely. But at the time, we decided to pull out. On the note of Olympics, though, it's really interesting. When I joined Travelex 2 years ago, I always ever thought, World Cups, Olympics, you've got to follow those around. There aren't more people visiting Paris this year because of the Olympics. It's really interesting. Millions and millions of people go to Paris every year, regardless if there's an Olympics or not. There aren't suddenly more hotel rooms because of the Olympics. I'd say a different sort of customer is going to Paris, people that love sport, people that want to witness the Olympic spirit. But what we find when there are big major tournaments, be it football or Olympics, we don't see a huge increase in volumes of people visiting destinations because in the summer, these are destinations that are already maxed out anyway. So it was a real surprise to me. I would have thought, we'll make a lot more money on the flights to Paris or the flights to America or the World Cup recently, the European Championships in Germany, where we do have a business. But it doesn't work like that. We have a big business in Doha, in Qatar. And we saw a bit of an uplift because Doha is a country that saw a huge increase in tourism because of the World Cup. It's not a place that's high on people's tourist list at the moment. But places like Germany, France, a lot of people go there anyway. So you don't see the same impact from big sporting events.
So whilst you're not in the US or France anymore, you are talking about further international expansion. Whereabouts are you looking
at? So we're looking everywhere. So we're looking at going into new countries with airport business, predominantly in the Middle East and in Asia. Areas of high growth where the big travel corridors. Southeast Asia is a very interesting space for us, where there's growing middle class, affluent wealth, people that have more money, that more discretionary spend, want to travel more. Those are markets that we're targeting. The Middle East are becoming huge travel hub of the world. We already have a big presence in the UAE and Qatar. So the other markets in that region are very exciting for us. But we're also looking at building retail distribution partnerships in other countries as well. I'd love to replicate what we've done in the UK with Tesco's and Asda in other markets in Europe, for instance, where there is much less choice for consumers to get travel money. So an interesting point, the UK has the most sophisticated travel money market in the world. You can get money at the supermarket, at the post office, at bureau de changes, at the airport, delivered to home. Pawnbrokers in the UK sell it. Real rich choice. Whereas in a lot of big countries in Europe, major economies, you still either have to go to a bank, and by the way, you can get it in the bank in the UK, the bank or the specialist bureau de change businesses. So consumers are much more limited on choice. So we think there's a huge opportunity to help retailers offer this extra service to their customers.
And in terms of, you say you're looking at the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is widely touted to get the next football World Cup. Are you hoping to be in the country by then?
I'd love to be in Saudi Arabia.
No question morally, ethically about moving into Saudi Arabia?
So for me, our focus has to be on supporting our customers' needs and on recognising where our shareholders see the best place for their investment is. We are very conscious that we are not a political organisation, and it's not our position to make decisions on that nature. Our shareholders decide where they think we should be operating, and they look at all economic environments and social environments and political things that are going on. But fundamentally, we as a business, we don't take a political position. We deal with all currencies and we deal with all nationalities, except, where there's some sort of, UN embargo. And for us, that's very important. We're helping everybody with their travel money. And it's not our place to make a decision on what's right or wrong from a political perspective.
Of course, your stock and trade is physical cash, but the prevailing narrative is that people are using cash, physical cash, less these days. And there are so many other competitors coming along into the market as well. How long do you think physical cash for travel will last?
So I think travel will be the last place where you will see cash disappear. So it will last for the longest. The reason being that a couple of things. There's some human behavioural side, but there's also some ecosystem stuff. So from a human behaviour side, when people travel, they are more likely to be nervous. And there's always an anxiety that your payment method in the UK doesn't work when you go to the Middle East or to Australia. The Nordics, well known for being a cashless society, but your high-tech Norwegian payment process isn't much use when you go and visit Bali. So what we find is that a lot of even countries striving to be cashless, the biggest confidence still in cash is for travel. UK consumers, if you ask them today, would still say 70% of them still have their most confidence in cash when they travel. That doesn't mean that they just use cash. They'll want a combination of card and cash. But 70% of consumers still, a bit of cash in my pocket just in case, to pay for services where only cash is accepted, or to just taking the fact that my electronic payment method might not work. Then you've got the sort of bigger, more ecosystem issues. So, in a lot of the world, MasterCard and Visa prevail. Whereas if you go to China is building its own payments ecosystem on WeChat, Alipay, and UnionPay China. And these systems are not interoperable with Visa and MasterCard. So when I go to Shanghai, I can't use Visa and MasterCard in any shops, even high-end shops. You can use it in the supermarket, in the hotel, and you can use it in your ATM. And then when Chinese people travel to the West, to Europe, their payment methods aren't accepted either. So you start finding that cash is this almost common denominator, which is acceptable everywhere. And there is, governments around the world, economies, they're trying to protect their own payment systems. So this creation of a homogenous payment platform, we're decades away. And for that reason, cash is still very, very important.
How long has physical cash got then?
I don't know. I'm not even going to guess, but it's not in my lifetime that it will disappear, and I don't think it will disappear in the lifetime of my children. And most of them are still teenagers. So I think cash has got a longevity of decades and decades still.
Thank you to our sponsor Blackboard, a global technology company powering social good across the world. Blackboard's corporate impact team empowers purpose-led organisations to drive change in their communities.
You studied at school, and do you think it's something that's important for young people nowadays?
I did no financial studying at school, and I very much do support calls by certain politicians and certain groups that financial literacy needs to be improved at school. There's some really scary facts. 50% of British people don't want to look at their current account because they don't want to see that they're overdrawn, or people are more likely to get divorced than to move their current account. Partly because they just don't realise that they can and that there are other options. So I think educating young people to understand how money works, compound interest, one of the eighth wonder of the world. It's one of those things that I think focusing on just maybe 3 or 4 core elements so that young people are more aware and more understanding of key financial principles, such as how savings can grow over long periods of time, understanding risk versus reward, and sort of giving them the comfort and the confidence to explore and question and challenge the products that they're being offered. I think absolutely is something that should be done more.
Thank you.
Travelex, obviously dealing with physical cash, you do have competitors in the digital space as well with Revolut and Wise. How are you facing up against that competition?
So we are very focused on a particular area of travel money. We are very service orientated, and we are very much focusing on our omni-channel presence. So if I give an example, some consumers in the market are very tech savvy or very financially conscious about the options that they have out there. And I would say that is not the majority. That is a segment of the market. Revolut and Wise have built amazing propositions where, off your own volition, you download an app, you take a picture of yourself, you take a picture of your passport, you connect your bank account, you wait for 2 weeks for a card to be delivered, you activate the card, and then you start taking it on holiday. And they're great. But for a lot of people, that's not how they operate or how they think or how they want to do their financial services. They want someone to guide them. They want someone to give them advice. They want someone to help them do it. Taking a photo of your passport and sending it down through the internet, a lot of people are not nervous about their personal data being hacked. A lot of people aren't comfortable connecting their bank account to another app. So for us, we're focusing on the customers that are looking for more of an assisted, guided experience. And the fact is that you can walk into one of our stores in the UK and within 5 minutes, you can walk out with a card, which has all the functionality of Wise and Revolut connected to your app. And we've shown you how to use your app, but that card, you're good to go. You don't have to wait for 2 weeks for it to be delivered to your house. And that's the big thing. We get rid of a lot of the friction and we make it really easy for consumers to activate and work with the card straight away. So I think we are doing, we have a proposition that's servicing a different group of customers to Revolut and Wise. And there's enough for all of us to go after. And we need to recognise that different people interact very differently with financial services. And if you try to create one uniform vanilla solution, it's impossible.
Obviously, you work for a foreign exchange company, but what does money mean to you personally?
What does money mean to me? Money is important because it enables you to provide and look after your family and loved ones. I mean, that's what the first comes back to, your hierarchy of needs. You need money to shelter, you need money for food. So for me, money gives me the ability to look after my family. And then I'm in a fortunate position, where, I have a career which has allowed me to earn some money now. So it allows me to offer and give my family more security and more experiences. So for me, it's an enabler. It's not the be all and end all though. And I'm a big believer that, having lots of money doesn't necessarily buy you happiness or pleasure. But having no money can definitely be a cause of upset and a bad time. So for me, it's an enabler, but it isn't the be all and end all.
Does it motivate you?
Does money motivate
Has it ever
me?
motivated you?
Deep down, it's not what rocks my boat the most. No, it isn't. It isn't. What I've learned is with money, and I challenge anyone who doesn't agree with this. It's lovely to get a pay rise when you get a new job, but the effect of a pay rise wears off after a few months. You always think, I should probably get a bit more. I deserve more. I deserve more. Whereas when you deliver something at work or anything that you're doing, and you do something that helps somebody or has a legacy effect, I think the personal satisfaction is much, much bigger. And it's something that's enduring. So when you give colleagues feedback or I get praise or feedback, it has a much longer effect on my performance and well-being than an incremental pay rise.
Going on to your background, Richard, your parents came to the UK as political refugees in the 1970s from Poland. Yeah. What impact did that have on you growing up?
So I grew up in West London, in a very Polish sort of part of London, Ealing. So a lot of the Second World War generations from Poland that settled after the war grew up there. So it influenced my growing up in that a lot of my friends and a lot of my sort of out of school stuff was involved with the Polish community. I was in the Polish Scouts. I played volleyball for a Polish team. But it was a positive experience that just was in tandem with my sort of English education. So I feel very much, when people ask me what I feel like I'm a British Pole. I have as much love and affiliation to both. And I like, and I love the fact that in Britain we can do that, and I can live in that sort of, that vibe where I can play a part in both sorts of communities.
So is it England or Poland then when they play each other at football?
That's a really good question. It's tough. That is really tough. Normally England does a lot better. So Poland are pretty rubbish when it comes to tournaments, and they don't play rugby. So I don't have a problem there.
Yeah.
But in the past, England and Poland used to play each other a lot. And I think I had to, celebrate both teams.
It's certainly an interesting background. There's obviously a lot of things going on in the news at the moment about immigration into the UK. Your parents came for political reasons to seek refuge in this country. Does that impact on you as an adult, looking at those stories in the media, conversations that people have within families and friendship groups?
It doesn't come up a lot, actually. We talk about it, with friends, and people make observations about what's going on. I'm very much a supporter of bringing different people of backgrounds. I think society's better for it. And from a personal perspective, I think where it's most successful is where people integrate into the society which they're joining. I'm very much respect and honor and celebrate the traditions of your ancestors and your relatives, but also respect and honor the traditions and culture of the country that you're choosing to live in. And that then creates, harmony and empathy between all things. So if people move to England but don't learn English, I think you're kind of antagonizing a situation potentially a little bit. Or you've got to, if you want to bring in a different way of living, invite people in to see how you do it and why you do it and educate people about it. Don't shut yourself off. So for me, it's all about different cultures and nationalities integrating and recognizing and respecting each other. And that involves a lot of dialogue and communication and talking.
The journey to the role that you are holding at the moment, it's been quite varied. You worked at Shell, BAA.
Yeah.
You joined HBOS a year before its collapse.
Yes.
Now, was that good timing or bad timing?
In hindsight, it was amazing for me in that, the colleagues that went through the financial crisis probably learned more about banking and financial services and what good looks like and what risks look like in that 12 months than a lot of people in financial services hadn't learned in 20 years before that. Because it had been a very, stable system. And a lot of people, in banks didn't really even need to understand that side. But that period meant that everyone from junior to senior roles got a real understanding of what makes a bank or financial organisation work effectively, why regulation is important. So for my own personal education, I learned a lot, and I probably got a lot of experiences that have helped me develop my career faster. Considering that I came to financial services, it wasn't like you said, I was an engineer and I worked in airport management. So it allowed me to get up to speed much faster. But clearly the impacts of that time on Britain and on the world were really bad. And seeing it up front, in a company that was in a lot of distress was tough. But I personally did learn a lot.
And just before taking this job, I'm interested in how it happened. Did you get headhunted? Did you see an advert on LinkedIn maybe, or a job site, or how did?
No, I'll tell you, and it's a good story for anyone where you can't plan anything. So after I worked for big corporates, I spent 7 years working for a company called Octopus, who were the backers of Octopus Investments and Octopus Energy, and I had an amazing 7 years there. And I sort of joined this company, and I thought, geez, why didn't I join a privately held entrepreneurial company sooner? Because it's very different, the pace at which you can innovate, the risk appetite, the things that you can look at doing. So I learned a lot, and I learned from some amazing entrepreneurs, people like Greg Jackson, who runs Octopus Energy, seeing how they think, how they approach problems. And after about 6 or 7 years at Octopus, I got offered the opportunity to go and help turn around a startup called Brickvest, which was a commercial real estate marketplace that had gone into administration and was bought by a German asset manager who had designs to get into property technology. And I got placed into that role by a headhunter. That role didn't work out, okay? It was during the pandemic. These things don't work. When a company tries to innovate and do something very different, there's a high risk that it won't happen, especially when you're turning around a failed startup. But the headhunter that put me into Brickvest then introduced me within weeks of me leaving Brickvest to Travelex. And if I hadn't done that sort of episode at Brickvest, which didn't work as I'd wanted to, I would never have been on the radar of the headhunter that then got me into Travelex. So there's a bit of serendipity. There's a bit of, sometimes you have to, go a little bit left or right to get to your end goal. And I've loved my last 2 years at Travelex, but I recognised that my time at Brickvest was tough. But if I hadn't had that experience, I probably wouldn't be doing this job now today. Was
that the toughest period of your career?
It wasn't the toughest. I've had a few. At Octopus, there was a time where, we were incubating a lot of startups. And sometimes when you do a startup, it doesn't work out as you'd want to. One startup, we grew too quickly. And we recognised that we had to scale back. And I'd hired a lot of brilliant people, but I ended up having to let them go. And that was tough. That was really tough.
That has an effect on somebody, doesn't it? Not just obviously the person losing their job.
Yeah.
But the person actually having to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
What impact did that have on you?
And it made me, it's interesting. When you go through that, you empathize, you're trying to empathize with the colleagues that you're letting go. But, being by nature who I am, I'm fairly competitive. I'm, ambitious. When something doesn't work out, it hurts. It's like anyone, if a sportsman who thinks they're going to win an event or a gold medal doesn't, real disappointment. As an entrepreneur, when you start a business, you have to go for it. You have to put your heart and energy into it. And you've got to believe it's going to work. And when it doesn't work, it's incredibly disappointing. And you feel it. It's like, I mean, people will laugh when I say it, but it's almost like, when you have a relationship and you really love someone, but they realize they don't love you, and you feel really upset, and you feel you want it to work, but it won't work. I mean, it's different, but it's the same. It's that thing where something that you really wanted to work didn't work. And it's that pang of disappointment. Coupled with it is that you're affecting other people's lives. Testament to the colleagues that we had to go. They were great. And a lot of them had more resilience than I even gave them credit for. And they work in startup because they know there's that risk, but they get a buzz out of that risk. And all of them have gone off to do bigger and better things. But it's strange. When you start a business as a founder, it's all in. But that means you take the ups with the downs, and they can be pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now you're holding the title of Chief Executive of Travelex, but we ask this to everybody. What does the title of CEO mean to you?
For me, it's a huge privilege. I'm almost embarrassed to be the CEO. So when people say, what do you do? I always say, I work at Travelex. And they say, what's your job? I say, I'm CEO. And then what do you do? I'm CEO. And it's a real privilege. My job is to lead a group of people to help our customers. So as CEO, my job is to create an environment that allows the colleagues that are really doing the work. And when I say these are the colleagues in our stores that are facing customers. They're the ones that are actually solving problems for customers and making money for our shareholders. Myself, my leadership team, we're a cost. And our job as a cost is we have to justify our presence to enable our customers and our colleagues facing those customers to be able to offer the best service possible. So for me, it's all about building the right environment, creating the right culture, setting the right plan, the right strategy to allow my frontline colleagues to be as successful as possible.
Is that something that weighs on your mind then, the justification of your cost? Because it's not going to be inconsiderable.
No. So there are people who I think do, not their cost, but like I say, it's a privilege. For me, it's a privilege. So when you work in financial services, you're often you're a controlled function. So you're regulated. You have responsibilities with the regulator. And I've always been very clear. For me, that's a privilege. Yeah, the regulator is giving me the privilege of providing a service to customers, to consumers, to helping them with their needs. There are people who I think find regulatory, accountability a burden on their shoulders, and it weighs them down, and they're almost trapped by it, and they worry more about getting it wrong than trying to deliver the best possible outcome for the customer.
Yeah.
Saving, their skin, covering themselves. Whilst I think when you're regulated or when you're the CEO, when you're in an executive position, it's a privilege. You've been given accountability, be it from the regulator or from shareholders, to do something pretty cool, to solve a need for a customer, to build a business, to create jobs. So to me, it's never a burden, it's a privilege. It's always a privilege.
And that privilege, I suppose, involves travelling all across the world as well. What's your travel?
I've done a bit of travel, yeah.
Yeah, what's your travel schedule look like?
So I travel about a week a month. I, like everyone, I've got a family and I try to balance that off. My wife has a full-time job and a career, and we've got 3 boys, so we need to make sure that we spend enough time with family and enough time at work. But I've got a supportive team, I've got a supportive wife. I travel about 1 week a month abroad. And they are really focused trips, Fortunately, a lot of our business is at airports. So from the moment actually, even before I leave the country, I'm able to interact with colleagues. But the moment I land, you're on the job. You're meeting colleagues. You're seeing how the stores operate in airports. So it's intense. Probably the biggest gripe my wife and kids have is that when we go on holiday, I'm kind of always popping into stores to see how colleagues are doing, checking out the competition. And that probably winds them up and embarrasses them. They get very upset when, I'm sort of shaking hands and having photos taken with colleagues in other countries. They're like, well, Dad, you're so embarrassing.
It must be difficult to switch off because it is readily there. You go fly abroad and there's a Travelex at every airport. Can you switch off when it is?
Can I switch off? I love what I do. I love my job.
Yeah.
I can switch off, but it's more when I pick activities in my life that mean I have to focus on them and have to switch off. I coach kids rugby on Sunday mornings. When you've got a bunch of 12-year-old boys shouting at you, you forget about everything else. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to practice karate. My kids started karate. I started with them. So when I'm in the dojo doing karate, not very well, but when I'm doing it, you have to focus.
What belt are you?
I'm trying to get my black belt at the moment. I'm a brown belt. I didn't pass
Slip
it
that
last
in.
Easter. Next Easter, I'm going to try again. So I failed once. I'm going to try again.
Wow.
I'm going to try again. So for me, I pick activities to focus and distract myself. But yeah, I think about work a lot. But I'm fortunate I like what I do. And there's been times in my career where I've done jobs that I didn't enjoy what I was doing. And then it becomes a pain and you it's unpleasant, but I like what I do. So it's not a burden, if I dream about work sometimes.
Yeah. And with that in mind, what is the future of Travelex over the next 2 to 3 years? Where would you like it to be?
So look, it's exciting and on several levels. We see huge opportunities for the business to grow, new markets, as I spoke about in Asia and the Middle East, new channels, new ways of helping customers access our proposition, be it with our digital cards or with cash itself. Consumers are much more demanding of convenience now than ever before. The fact that you can collect things wherever you want, you can have them delivered to you at your time and convenience. We need to change our proposition to reflect how people interact with services. And then also, it would be a right me not to say it. We're a business that, we were bought out by investors that take companies that require recovery. Our shareholders have been incredibly supportive and they've taken us through that recovery curve. But over the next 12, 24 months, it's very likely that our shareholders will want to redeploy that money into new businesses where they can grow and recover companies. So, we in the next 12 months, we'll also be looking for hopefully new long-term equity investors to take the business onto its next chapter as well.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.